Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about The Pale Blue Eye. The Pale Blue Eye is an American mystery thriller based on the novel of the same name, and tells the story of Augustus Landor, an ace detective who, in the year 1830, is hired to investigate the murder of a military cadet at West Point in New York. He quickly discovers that this murder is more complicated than he originally suspected. This is due to the code of silence that the other cadets follow, which hinders his investigation. Fortunately, he finds cooperation in the form of the outcast cadet Edgar Allan Poe, and the two race to try and find who is behind the murder before more of them can be committed. I'm not sure why this movie got so many mixed reviews when it came out, because in my opinion, it's one of the better mystery movies Netflix has released. Despite its slow pace, it succeeds in keeping the audience guessing up to the very end, and it absolutely nails the tension provided by its atmospheric presentation. To start, Christian Bale is excellent in the lead role of Augustus Landor. He has the same inquisitive and intuitive nature one would expect from him as a detective, but what makes him so great is the way he carries out his investigation for the murder. He responds to pretty much everyone he interacts with the same level of indifference and sarcasm, always saying, or ah whenever someone finishes their sentence. It was interesting how polite and unassuming he was in the beginning, only to increasingly begin to hold others in contempt as the story builds, which makes sense as more of Landor's backstory is revealed. Without saying too much about it, I like how his family background is explored as Landor goes about his investigation. There's just enough detail revealed about it to make the audience feel sympathy for Landor without letting it bog down the main story, and Bale is fantastic with how he pulls off the right emotional cue that a scene calls for. The other lead character, Edgar Allan Poe, played by Harry Melling, is just as fascinating to watch whenever he's on screen. Just like Landor, he comes off as typical at first, this time as the eccentric outcast among his fellow cadets, but he quickly becomes likable on account of his artsy personality and welcoming southern charm. The movie has a lot of fun with this fictionalized version of Poe without making him out to be a caricature. It's great to see him act so eccentric when he assists Landor with the investigation, but the movie also knows when to take a break and show his more emotional side, which happens to be similar to that of Landor's. Because of this, the two work very well together as partners. One is able to help fill in pieces of the puzzle where the other cannot, and the banter between Landor's dry disposition and Poe's upbeat rantings is always amusing to see. I have to admit, it took me a while to understand the nature of their relationship, but once I did, I loved it. They're both alone in a cruel world filled with injustices and all manner of other evil things, so while they don't seem to connect at first glance, once events start to unfold, they realize that they need each other a lot more than they thought, and their dynamic in this regard makes the story more enjoyable. Obviously, the underlying mystery behind the murder at West Point is the biggest selling point this movie has to offer. I generally don't like to talk too much about the plot behind mystery movies, as there's always a fear of spoiling the story, but I have to say I really enjoyed how it proceeded in this movie. This may sound a bit redundant considering the genre, but there really is a true sense of mystery behind what's going on. Everything happens slowly but surely, so the way events are paced gives this constant feeling of something eerie and sinister afoot, like the killer could be behind any tree or inside any building. Landor and Poe's investigation is made more intense by the cast of characters they encounter while trying to solve the murder. Almost all of them have some sort of quirk that could make them a suspect, so the nature of who's behind the murder is always unpredictable, which is a good thing. I found that many movies with mysteries behind them don't always succeed with keeping me guessing to find out who is behind everything, as either the clues or the suspect themselves are too obvious, but this movie did a great job at keeping me on my toes with how much variety there was to the characters. The military academy in particular was one of the things I enjoyed so much about the movie, because it adds another layer of antagonism to the mystery. Landor and Poe frequently experience hostility from the doctrine of the academy due to their nature as outsiders, so it was great to see the two parties butting heads while trying to race against time and prevent another murder. The story does have one disagreeable thing about it, if not an outright flaw, and that it takes a long time for everything to come together. The story proceeds in rather mundane fashion with how Landor and Poe go from point A to point B, find clues, discuss it in privacy, before doing the same thing again and again. This can be good to a certain extent because it allows suspense to build better in certain parts, but there's also times when the movie is moving just a bit slower than it needs to be. Part of the problem may have to do with its lengthy runtime, but having a little less dialogue in the first two acts would have helped a lot. Some old cliches come up as well that are a bit tiring to see in a modern movie. It's weird how detectives untrained in certain professions are able to spot things that others miss, especially when it's medical related. And for as much as I praise the characters, there are a few that just come off as silly and don't mesh well with the tone of the movie, one of which comes in the form of Gillian Anderson's character Mrs. Marquis, who is just plain odd. Some of the clues the characters find are intriguing, but others feel like a stretch in terms of the conclusions they reach to get to them. One clue in particular baffled me, in which Landor and Poe examine one tiny scrap of paper and they're able to deduce an entire paragraph that was meant to be read from it, and I just felt like it was a really big reach. For as slow and tropey as the story can be though, there's one thing that makes the story forgivable for this, and that's the aesthetics. This movie was released only 1 week into 2023, and we have what is possibly the most visually stunning movie of the year so far. The costumes and set designs all look faithful to the era this movie takes place in, and the cinematography, oh man is it good. The cold winter scenery spread throughout the movie, combined with the dark ambient soundtrack and careful use of lighting, leaves every scene dripping with atmosphere. It nails the grim tone one would expect from a murder mystery and adds to the chilling nature of its events. I was also happy with how it presented the more horror-like element of its story. Again, I don't want to reveal too much, but I appreciated how realistic and grounded it was. It never comes off as full-on supernatural, but there's just enough doubt and suspense left to the viewer's imagination to wonder how it'll make sense later on. And when it's all said and done, the ending left a fairly big impact on me. Once more, without mentioning spoilers, it never ends in the way one expects. Not just once, but twice. It's where everything comes to a head and Landor and Poe's character arcs come to a satisfying conclusion. This movie's ending is where it rewards the audience for its patience in regards to its slow pacing, and on that front, it more than delivers. Overall, The Pale Blue Eye is a solid murder mystery movie that takes a while to get going, but once it does, it's awesome. If you like mysteries and you want to see one set in an old English time period, you'd enjoy checking this out. I'm still not sure what critics were expecting with this movie. Sure, it isn't perfect, and there are parts about it I wish were better, but it still remains a tense and riveting experience in spite of its flaws. Any movie that's able to take me by surprise twice while remaining unpredictable the entire time definitely has something special about it, suggesting there's a lot more to it than meets The Pale Blue Eye. What did you think about this movie? Did you enjoy the depiction of its characters and gothic setting, or do you think the story was too slow? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of The Pale Blue Eye. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part where next time I review the Mexican drama, Noise. Bye bye!